Welcome to Coruzant Technologies, home of the Digital Executive Podcast.
Welcome to the Digital Executive. Today's guest is Neal Hansch. Neal Hansch is the CEO and managing partner of Foundry, where he leverages over 25 years of venture capital, product management, technology operations, corporate development, and trusted advisory experience to lead the firm. Prior to joining Foundry, Neal was managing director of the Emerging Markets Technology Training, Investment, Incubation Program at the Meltwater Entrepreneurial School of Technology, where he managed a global team of 150 professionals, over 20 startup investments, and partnerships with Google, Samsung, and Vodafone. Well, good afternoon, Neal. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. This is exciting. Again, I traverse the world virtually, Neal, when I do these podcasts, most of them in North America, but I've gone to 40 countries. But what's really cool is I spent a lot of time with guests like yourself in Silicon Valley, and it's been a lot of fun. And so I, again, welcomed you to the show tonight, and we're just going to jump right into the questions. So, Neal, you've got quite the career in venture capital. You're an entrepreneur, board member, now the CEO of Foundry. Could you share with our audience the secret to your career growth and what inspires you?
Thank you. Love the question. And so I'd say the secret to my career growth, and if I really think through it, it's been a fairly natural one. From my first role, which I started in the dark side of investment banking in the late 90s, right around the first .com era, and which led me to being on the other side of the table, which is the venture investment side, backing many of those companies, which as a banker became our clients that we took public, which also led me to wanting to get operating experience at a software company to really see that other leg of the stool, if you will, which is actually the company building firsthand, and then back to venture. But just a consistent theme and through line over the last 20 plus years. That being said, beyond just the nature and the quality of the work, I'd say for career growth, relationships. Yeah, when I look back and think that one role took me to the next naturally in terms of the nature of the work, but genuinely it was the relationships built, as colleagues, in some cases as co-investors, that I would attribute to where I am today. And I think, as a part of that also, it's connecting the dots, which for the business that Foundry is in, is at the very heart of what we do. But, the relationships, connecting the dots between them to the next opportunity in terms of professionally. And I would say one other piece, which is also relevant for Foundry's business, is just the globality. So for my career, while I've largely been sitting in Silicon Valley, for the last 20 years, it's that building bridges and the cross-border. So not being narrowly focused on this zip code or those nearby, but so much of the career has been the tech ecosystem, but it's ecosystems. And you hear some folks say that Silicon Valley is no longer a place. It's more of an ethos. It's more of spread globally. And so my career has been here. It's been in emerging markets, and the clients, or as we call them today, members. They are everywhere from Latin America to the Middle East, Europe, Asia, and so that's been a big part of my career. And what inspires me throughout all of that, for us, the kind of the intellectual stimulation of working across industries and connecting dots across industries. I would say the other piece is what inspires me is wherever I'm at, it's outcomes. And so, I talk a lot about with my current colleagues that work that we may do that feels like research, it's all so that we set the stage, make decisions and recommendations and move to that next step, which is driving to a tangible outcome. And so that's something I'm passionate about is ultimately looking back at the end of the year and being able to point to, here's the fruits of the labor. Last but not least, which goes back to some of the career growth comments, is authentic relationships that really inspires. I mean, I think it was harder to probably appreciate a couple of years into the career, but a couple of decades in, recognizing just the power of authentic and genuine relationships and being able to give and get value in a very genuine fashion over time. So I know I jumped around a bit, but I think about career growth and what inspires me early on and to today, some of the common themes throughout.
Thank you, Neal. I appreciate that. And you're absolutely right. I've talked to some people that can really get down into the weeds in emerging technology. But at the end of the day, everybody resonates with the same thing: is connecting dots, building relationships, and that's really the key, the foundational keys to success. So thank you for sharing that. And Neal, your company is a membership-based innovation advisory. It builds bridges between leading global corporations and the innovation economy. Could you share a best practice or two for launching a corporate venture arm?
Absolutely. So, as you touched upon, the business of Silicon Foundry, in the simplest of terms, is helping build bridges between the Fortune 2000 and the best of breed emerging players, whether that's entrepreneurs or startups. This was born out of seeing corporations the world over increasingly looking to navigate and tap that external innovation happening, and one of the ways to tap it, to support it, and also to benefit from doing those activities is corporate venture arms. So about, call it, a third to half of the companies that we work with, the corporations, we're explicitly working with the corporate venture arms, and these are the groups that make strategic investments, often in startups that they're also most likely working with commercially. And we have conversations every week, not just with those corporations that have had long-standing established corporate venture arms, but many, and I think the number last year was 200 plus corporates established for the first time corporate venture activity. So even during COVID, this trend continued. I think what you see in terms of pattern recognition and words of advice, if you will, for best practices in launching a corporate venture arm. One is the purpose and really the definition of success. So if it doesn't exist already, why is the CEO, the board, the senior management team giving the green light, dedicating the resources to launch a corporate venture arm, and being able to ensure that the definition of success. So if we fast forward ahead, 12 months to 36 months, what will we use to help determine and answer the question of, was this effort a success? Because there's a lot of different reasons. There's certainly core common ones of why to have this as a tool in your toolbox as a corporate, and in the various activities you may do in and around the term innovation. But I think that's one, and it's really expectation setting. I think the second is, where will it fit in the organization? And often what that means is, and it is tied to the definition of success, but who will it report into? How will it go about taking action? What's required to pull the trigger on a strategic investment? That's the fundamental mandate of corporate venture arms. So I think that's another, if we were talking to someone, they think they want to do it, this is what we'll advise them of. You got to have alignment on some of these key questions. And the last piece, as with anything in life, is the people. Right. So who's going to be leading the effort? Have they done this before? Venture capital is not rocket science, if you will, but it's definitely a trait. It's a skill set. There's nuances to it. And as a corporate, you're also entering the fray with institutional VCs, private VCs, not attached to a corporate. So I think defining and aligning on success, the structure and where it will live within the grander scheme of the corporate. And last but not least, who's going to lead these efforts? And do they have the skill set? Would they benefit from a complement? And Silicon Foundry, this is a role we play with a number of CVCs. I think these would be probably three of the top five best practices or areas to really have a clear view and vision and game plan on in launching a corporate venture arm.
Thank you, Neal. I appreciate that. And I know our audience will as well. We hear a lot about the VC community and institutions or individuals or private individuals, but you expanding a little bit on the CVC tonight is very helpful. So thank you. And Neal, are you leveraging any new or emerging technologies within your firm? Maybe not, but maybe you found a cool tool or app that you found useful you might be able to share.
Yes, I love the question because, our day job is navigating and separating the signal from the noise and really identifying the best of breed and what we think will be most impactful, new and emerging technologies, platforms, even business model innovations. And if we reflect that back onto our business, one thing that struck me is, in many ways, our core asset for our business is our network. It's our network of entrepreneurs, of VCs, of service providers, as we think about it, other nodes in the ecosystem, in the technology ecosystem. So core for us is a category of a SaaS platform, category of CRM, customer relationship management. So not a new and emerging technology, although it's one of those categories, perhaps like video conferencing, where it's been around for a long time, but there's endless areas and opportunities for advancement and new tech. So we use today we use a company called Copper, which I believe the founder is originally from Salesforce, right? One of the most well-known CRM providers. And so perhaps not new tech, but embedded within, there are a lot of features and functionalities that are constantly being introduced. I think this probably intersects. So it's not a specific app, but this general theme of AI. So how can AI be applied to indexing and organizing and surfacing insights across your network? For our business, if I took that one step further, AI and ML, machine learning, often folks will look at us, and part of our core value prop is matchmaking. Connecting the dots that party A should be talking to party B because we know what party A is interested in, party B we believe to be the best fit. And we've constantly been looking for, and it's a very kind of human process right now. But we've constantly been looking even for what we do. Are there, AI-based solutions that could help us sift through the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of emerging companies to find those who are the best fit, given the mandates of the Fortune 2000 players we look at? The challenge with that, and the last comment I'll make here is, AI is only as good as the data that it has. And ultimately, much like matchmaking in real life between humans, the most important data points, they don't exist in a database. Right. And so it's ultimately that human eye, that human brain, and connecting the dots the right way. So hopefully that helps answer the question in terms of emerging tech, but perpetually emerging tech in terms of CRM. And then, what's most cool for us is, are there AI applications that can impact our business? But ultimately, the last mile is going to be the magic, the human judgment, the human touch, and that's what that's part and parcel for our business today.
Absolutely. And again, until machines truly take over the world, there's a debate on that, but we'll always need humans hand in hand with AI. So thank you for sharing, Neal. And Neal, last question. Can you share something from your career experience that might be helpful for those looking to grow their career in either venture capital or entrepreneurship?
Absolutely. And interrelated, but definitely different day jobs. Having spent most of my career explicitly as a VC, we would get this question regularly. And I think the one, in terms of advice to get into the VC industry or advice to be a successful VC, I think unlike a lot of other industries, there is no one path to VC. Being an engineer or having an MBA, there's no, this is how you break into the industry. I think the common themes, though, for being a VC, if you look at the characteristics or the traits, one I think that all have, or at least all of the best performing ones have, is just that fundamental intellectual curiosity. Because so often you're spanning multiple industry sectors as the landscape changes. Many VCs were pot themselves from one area to the next, but consistent is just that curiosity, that love of going deep in an area, developing a viewpoint on it that ultimately will lead you to, here's what we believe is the right approach, and the best companies that have the strategy that align with what you believe is the one that will be the winning one, and the teams that are the ones building those businesses and driving it. I think two other fundamental points that come to mind is being a VC, growing your career, and it goes back to relationships, but from the lens of it's a service business. So as a VC, You are developing relationships with entrepreneurs on one side as you look to hopefully back them, and they allow you to be along for the ride by being investors in their companies. And on the other side of the coin, relationships with limited partners who are the funding sources that provide the dollars that the VCs use to then go put into the companies. You're also, and so you're in service of those two groups. And back to relationships, co-investors. It's a business where you're not investing solo typically, but you have other investors around the table with you. And if they see you not just as a strong investor, but one that can provide value to the companies you invest in. And last but not least, one that they want to be along for the ride with, because in the venture business, which will be my last comment here, it's long-term. There's an old adage that, to train a VC is like training a F-16 fighter pilot. It takes multiple years and potentially tens of millions of dollars because of the amount of capital that you deploy. And so, and you don't know if you're a good VC in most cases for years, right? The time from initial investment to liquidity to an exit is not measured in months or quarters the vast majority of the time. So just having that fortitude to recognize it's a long-term play. Now shifting over to entrepreneurship, and I'd say where I'm at today, this is an entrepreneurial venture. If there's a couple of common characteristics with entrepreneurship or advice is, of course, have to have the grit. As a father of two kids, certainly reading all the books of grit, teaching your kids grit is probably one of the best things you can do for them. Well, boy, as an entrepreneur, you've got to have that grit. You've got to have that passion for what you're building. And the highs are incredibly high and the lows, equally as much. You got to be comfortable with uncertainty as an entrepreneur. And last but not least, as an entrepreneur, and truly, this is a consistent theme. You got to be ready to zig and zag. Whether it's as a VC or as an entrepreneur, knowing that the initial plan, the original thesis, the roadmap that you laid out, the business plan, if you wrote one, that you had going in day one, it's going to be wrong. You don't know how it's going to be wrong, but it's definitely not going to be, if you fast forward ahead, the way it all played out. And so to zig and zag and read the market, what's working, what's not, confirming the thesis that you started it with, or denying it and figuring out where it was off base and adjusting accordingly. All the best entrepreneurs, all the best leaders, that is absolutely a trait they've got to have. So, a few thoughts there for those who are considering a career in venture capital or making the leap into entrepreneurship.
Thank you, Neal. And definitely saw a lot of parallels there between both, but you're absolutely right. Being an entrepreneur myself, you can certainly see where, that growing up, going to the school of hard knocks, getting that grit, as you said, will help you survive and move on. So thank you. And last thing, Neal, is it was a pleasure having you on today, and I look forward to speaking with you real soon.
Likewise. And thank you so much for including me here. And it's a pleasure to meet and be able to share some thoughts across these questions of the last 10 minutes.
Bye for now.